A big thank you to our partners, Companion Stockholm, Devrel Events, Make Trade, and Sweden on the Go for making this happen. A big thank you to my Startup Grind team in Stockholm, Ulek, who runs Devrel Events. Jens is our chapter mentor. He runs the Hong Kong chapter. Amanda runs our social media. Marina, she'll be taking the Q&A in around 35, 40 minutes. She runs our community, and we recently had Beryl come in as our partnerships lead. So warm welcome, Beryl, to the community. I'll stop sharing my screen and join me in welcoming Adeo. Adeo, I'm bringing you on.
Very quickly, I run an organization called the Founder Institute, which has accelerators for starting a company. We also have accelerators for being an ecosystem leader. And we have accelerators to start venture capital firms. And we operate in different regions of the world, about 225 cities we have programs today. And previous to the pandemic, those 225 cities or so, actually a little bit more, were all in person. So you would go to an event, you would go very physical business. And then we looked around and we saw Asia with infection rates, and we were very concerned that we might be a super spreader source. So sort of mid-February, of 2020, we made the decision to just stop doing real world events. Now, we were larger in terms of event organizing than Startup Grind, which was actually also very large. So Startup Grind is very, very large, and Founder Institute runs a few thousand more events a year. So I think we were like 7,000 or 8,000 physical real world events per year. And the average size might have been 50 people or so. So it was a journey to bring that all online over the last 12 months, that's for sure.
But how do you think, so is it completely online, that the program that you run in Founder Institute?
Yeah, so we operate now almost entirely virtually. So there's some things here and there throughout the world. We actually discourage it that are real world. But so they might have a graduation and have a few people in a room somewhere, but most of the participants are virtual. So I would say, everything's online. It's been great. We've grown 3 to 5 times. There's been no, there's some perception issues on quality, and definitely there's a loss of physical connection that's very important for community and entrepreneurship. If you're, I'm alone, right? Here I am. No one's around. I don't have colleagues or coworkers, because we're in pretty severe tier of lockdown here in California. So, losing that connectivity is hard, because a lot of times you're forging relationships, hiring people, etc. Exactly. And you want to get to know them, but we don't have that connection anymore. So that part's been challenging. It's definitely affected entrepreneurs. However, with that said, business has just been booming. We're probably 3 to 5 times larger on every metric, every single one. So
I think initially for a month or so, we had some hiccups in terms of adapting to the new technology. So people coming into Teams, Zoom, and Meets. But I think everybody has adapted so fast that it sounds like a second nature now. People showing up, and I've seen a lot more punctuality when it comes to meeting entrepreneur teams. Everyone is there on time, things start, and they finish on time. I don't know. There's a lot of punctuality coming with digital space moving. Yeah.
Well, Sweden was an interesting case study in a lot of different regards, like what to do, what not to do. Very hard to tell. Like, I certainly don't judge decisions. I'm happy that people tried different strategies on how to deal with the pandemic. And so, while a lot of the world was going through weird lockdown machinations, Sweden had restrictions, but was relatively open. So it's been an interesting journey. I'll tell you, the bigger thing right now is, what are we going to do to come back? What does back look like? Because there's no, like, I say back, but I'm being a little bit facetious. We're going to go forward, right? Exactly. The way we were living was totally broken. Mm-hmm. So there is no going back. If we go back, we're fucked. Okay. Like, and I don't mean to say that like to be controversial. The things we were doing to ourselves and to our planet were fundamentally wrong on every level. Mm. We were destroying ourselves and we were destroying our planet, and the ultimate self-destructive journey. So the good news is the pandemic, for the most part, hit the pause button on probably one of the most rampant periods of destruction in human history. Mm. And then what's happened is there's been really an explosion of innovation that's been happening surrounding the pandemic, RNA, vaccines, all these things that are coming out to address the pandemic. But also just whether like in the public markets and liquidity, there's been SPACs. So as people have stopped running around with a flamethrower, destroying the planet around them and themselves, they've been having the time to reflect and innovate and create really positive changes for the world that hopefully will continue long past when the pandemic is over. But there is a question, like, what does the world look like after the pandemic? Do we all get back to our vehicles and jobs that don't matter, driving long distances to do things that no one cares about, that don't really add any value to the world? Are we going to go back to that? Really? So you want to commute an hour each way every day to do accounting in an office for a job you don't like, for a company that you don't like, for something that doesn't matter? You really want to keep doing that? Probably not. So what does this new world look like? And I think it's going to be very dramatic change.
Exactly. I think very interesting thoughts, Adeo. And I think what we see here in Sweden is that suddenly in the last 1 year, there has been such a rush towards impact sector. So the impact is opening up, be it social innovation, be it new workspaces, be it the traditional sustainability side. So impact is getting a lot more attention, and the investment gates are opening up. And the other thing that you are mentioning also is people are rethinking their priorities in life. So they are really approaching to entrepreneurship as something which can really help solve problems now rather than running a standard business. So I think really interesting thoughts. If we go back a little bit, I'll just want to go. So for our audience, I think it'll be very interesting to know, how did Founder Institute start? Where did the idea? Because before that, you have been.
So look, I can give a little bit of background, but we can come back to the impact thing in a moment because I think it's important. Yeah. Okay, so I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years. About half of that time, I was building companies, and got very successful very young. I had 2 separate billion-dollar companies, before the age of 30. Back when $1 billion was a lot. Now it's like everyone has $1 billion company. And actually, I would say $100 billion company is something that's in a $1 trillion company is, it's like, wow. So, which is kind of insane if you think about it. So, and then for the second half of the 13 years, or the second half of the 26 years, the second 13 years, I focused on really the entrepreneurship industry. Mm-hmm. So I started something called The Funded, which allowed entrepreneurs to rate venture capitalists because venture capitalists were doing a lot of bad things. That basically fixed a pretty broken venture capital industry that after the crash of 2000, it took about 7 or 8 years to recover. And The Funded was a part of that recovery. Out of that, I realized that early stage entrepreneurs didn't really have resources to launch businesses. Yeah. And I created the Founder Institute and spread it around the world to really create high standards of entrepreneurship in every corner of the earth as a means to rise humanity out of really a difficult time. And I think we're at the verge of that, which is we've activated a global engine of innovation and empowerment, and innovation plus empowerment in the hands of talented and motivated people will cause, positive societal change in everywhere from Afghanistan, where we operate, Angola, all around the world, right? So, and Sweden, the Nordics. So, I want to see, I'm a little frustrated by the Nordics. I feel that you, as a region in the world today, you're known for like games and, like services, like, come on, guys. So I think your innovation engine and your heart is in the right place. I think a lot of companies in the Nordics are focused on impact, which we were talking about before, which is great. But, you have big gaming companies and like maybe a payments company, like whatever. And where's your big impact? So just to round out my own story. So basically I'm on a personal quest to fix all the problems that humanity faces on this planet. And I don't really care what people think, if they think I do it well or badly. I mean, some of these things are pretty obvious. We need to empower people, work on things that matter, and fix the planet. And like, period, end of story. It's not that complicated, right? We don't need to like come up with some magic formula. It's that, right? Empower people to work on things that matter and fix the planet. And then going back. And so that's what I'm doing with the Founder Institute. That was the genesis of the Founder Institute. That's what we're doing with our ecosystem builder accelerators. That's what we're doing with our venture capital firm accelerators. We're creating entities that empower people to work on things that matter and fix the problems of the world. Now back to the Nordics and things that matter. So look, I think the heart of the people in the region are in the right place, which is great. But the companies, the resulting entities that are big are not in alignment with what the world needs. So, you're scaling the wrong things. And so if you look at the world today, whatever the global, it's, the trillions of dollars of the global economy is, whatever, 40 trillion or whatever the exact number is, it is largely dedicated to destructive activity, right? There's not a lot of stuff in the global GDP that's constructive, that's regenerative, that's, environmentally focused. There's some, for sure. I'm not saying it's zero, but it isn't much greater than 10%. Right. So what we almost need to do is, for everything that we do that's destructive, right, we need to have a constructive and regenerative component, which, depending on how you think and look at things, means that our economy our global economy is going to grow by adding positive things for humanity to do that offset or counteract the destructive things that humanity's already doing. And now I think we're going to reduce the amount of destructive stuff that we do, for sure. We have to, right? That's not even a question. But then for every destructive thing that we do, we're going to have a regenerative or constructive thing. And eventually, right, we're going to reduce the destructive activities, increase the constructive and regenerative activities, and turn the ship around, right? And instead of like the ice caps melting and this environmental disaster in Australia burning and California burning and no snow in Stockholm, we'll actually come to a place where the planet's healing itself. And our activities are helping the healing process. And we heal ourselves and we heal the planet around us. And we turn the ship that has been heading in the wrong direction for a long time. So, and actually, I see that as an enormous economic opportunity, right? Because we have to create an economy the scale of almost the entire global economy to counteract the destructiveness, right? And again, we'll shrink some of the destructiveness, but net, that's growth. So when you have a place like the Nordics, which is leading in a lot of the thinking around this and lagging in a lot of the action on a global scale, to me, that's unacceptable, right? So, especially because it's not like you can't do it, right? You have huge companies, right, spread throughout the Nordics that have expanded around the world digitally and physically. So you know how to do it. So, and you have the right mental models and thinking. So, I encourage everyone on this call and on this webinar not to do something that they think makes sense because they read in some book or they listened to some podcast or webinar, but they do something that's going to actually right the challenges of the world in a massively positive way so that we can, again, turn that ship around. And I think the Nordics should be leading.
Yeah, I think that's a very good observation. I do see a shift happening. Recently, Norgen ended up raising more than 1 billion SEK for its impact VC. So I think that's something happening. So impact investment is on its way, but transition from investment to actually building something which scales fast and becomes big, it's a matter of time. Another thing which I found,
I don't know about that. Actually, I don't. So I know that's one of the topics today. So let's just go right into that.
Okay.
Time. Okay. I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. Let's. I'll give you the best example.
Okay.
How much time did it take for the world to change when the pandemic struck? Not a lot of time. So people were like, oh, oil, we'll never kick our dependence on oil. Well, oil went negative, okay? And like pretty early on in the pandemic, oil went negative. Now, if you had said to someone, it's 2019 and, in about 4 months from now, the price of oil will go negative and the global economy will stop, you would be like, you're crazy, right? You're literally crazy. That will never happen. And you know what else is going to happen? Santa's going to come and give me a back rub right now. Oh, wait, that didn't happen either. Well, guess what? It did happen. So all these concepts of time are wrong. Right? They're mental models that we are perpetuating as some sort of excuse of inaction. Okay? So let me tell you a different narrative, which I'm not saying is right, but I can tell you the time narrative is not right because we have empirical evidence from only a few months ago that you can change massive amounts of things in a very short period of time. Massive amounts of things that were thought to be unchangeable, actually. So, if you are in alignment with what you want, right, and that alignment can be found in your offering to the world, then like time collapses.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll tell you a story to this effect. So we had an idea that venture capital worldwide is broken. And there's a lot of reasons we feel that. It's largely driven by men. A lot of these men are not very thoughtful in their dealings with entrepreneurs of any race or gender. It's concentrated in a number of cities, and the money going into it is growing. So the firms are getting later stage. So there's not a lot of early stage venture capital, especially when you leave major hubs. Like, all things being equal, Sweden is actually a pretty good place. But compared to London, it sucks. Compared to Berlin, it sucks. Compared to pretty much a few other places in Europe and then a few other places in the world, it sucks for raising capital. So if you're a Swedish entrepreneur today and you really want to become a $1 billion company, your odds in Sweden today are poor compared to London, compared to Silicon Valley, compared to a number of other hubs around the world. Now, that doesn't make any sense, right? That shouldn't be the case. But there really isn't a thriving venture capital scene in Sweden like there is in London or Silicon Valley. So we said, we're going to go fix that. Okay. We're going to make good investors that have a good heart and are all over the world.
Okay.
There was an idea, okay, before the pandemic, right before, days before, we launched, pandemic hits, that enterprise of ours in the span of 1 year is created 42 funds that have raised almost $180 million. They made 60 investments in just the span of 1 year, just the lightning fast in venture capital terms. And we had almost 2,000 to 1,800 to be exact general partners applied to the most recent cohort. And it's this Cartesian explosion of interest. And we've done no marketing. It's rare that I talk about it publicly at all. This is private. Word of mouth, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Thousands of people, super talented, famous CEOs, all famous, smart people from all women in Africa who are super successful all around the world, applying to launch funds, working together to launch funds all around the world, and no marketing.
Is it part of your Founder Institute core program, or how is it related to Founder?
No, it's not. So we're probably gonna, look at spinning it out or something like that. I mean, it's related in that we want to help entrepreneurs all around the world. So we need to have entrepreneurs, we need to have ecosystem leaders, we need to have venture capital funds. But why I tell that story is without any marketing, right? Without anything, right, that you would think you need, without budget, nothing. Right? This idea will profoundly change the world. So I'll give you, how profoundly? We launched a third of all venture capital firms created worldwide last year, because not that many are created. We're going to triple the number of venture capital firms launched this year, and we'll probably have helped launch over half of all the venture capital funds operating in the world by 2025. And it was just an idea, right? But if you are in alignment and you create something that the world really needs, then time collapses and you can do things that are seemingly impossible in a very short period of time, make things better. And we ask every general partner that enrolls into what we VC Lab, the Venture Capital Accelerator, to sign an oath called the Mensarius Oath, that they will do good in the world. We check. And if we feel they're not doing good in the world, we don't want to work with them. And we ask them to leave, because it's not about making money, right? The alignment with what you're working on and the thing that you want to work on that matters in the world. Money is energy. Yeah. And if you're in alignment doing something that matters, the money will flow in the same way that your energy flows to make that into reality.
For this VC lab, what are you looking for when you take in entrepreneurs, or is there a prior investment experience necessary?
No, we just look for people who are awesome and righteous, like super smart, super capable, and have a great moral code. And you know, we were inundated with applications from all sorts of very interesting and successful people, top angels in Europe, top female board member in Canada, head of Google in Africa, head of Omidyar in Africa, lots of really, really, truly exceptional human beings who said, look, you know, I see your vision that there isn't enough funds in the world, and starting the venture capital fund is super hard. But, you know, leave aside VC. I just brought it up as an example. Because, you know, if you do something, because we were talking about scaling of startups, in many ways, it's like a startup. A year ago, it was an idea on a piece of paper. A year later, it's probably one of the most impactful things that I think have been launched in 2020 that I've ever heard of. And it's scaled incredibly just from an idea. So why I say this is that you sort of said, we all know it takes time. Yes, it's not no time, right? I'm not going to, it's not like, oh, I have an idea and tomorrow it's $1 billion. No, but it all these constructs of time and success are wrong. Okay. Success comes from within, and then it manifests out in the world if you are in alignment. And if you're not in alignment, and I see this with entrepreneurs all the time, because their mind conceives of a problem that doesn't exist, and they spend a lot of energy trying to make that, you know, problem statement or their solution to a non-existent problem statement get traction, and they're just like pounding away at a figment of their imagination.
That's a very interesting point, because I think that's where I think that probably links back to what you were saying, the speed of impact ventures coming out of Sweden or Nordics. Because what I have noted is that in Nordics, there's a high degree of planning. So when you are coaching startups, you are pushing them to plan, maybe revise your plan 10 times before you actually go out into the market. So combine that with figment of imagination and over-planned venture, you end up having something which probably is not a great fit in the market.
Exactly. So here's, you know, your mind is a great tool for some things, but not everything. Right? I think we use our mind for like everything. It's like, you know, you use your mind in the bedroom with your partner. You're like, God, what do I do now? It's like, you got to turn your mind off for a lot of important activities, especially surrounding entrepreneurship, and really sort of, you can tap into who you are, tap into the real problems of the world, and not these mental models that you have of the problems. And listen, I'm not saying don't use your mind. Quite the opposite. I'm saying use your mind for the tools that your mind is best at, and use your proverbial heart for the tools that your heart is best at, And, I see people try and solve heart problems with their mind and try and solve mind problems with their heart. It's just like the misalignment is massive. And so let's go back to over planning and stuff like this. So I'll give you something that I've been noticing a lot with myself. A lot of times I'll be like, I have a feeling about this, right? Gut feeling. And then I'll be like, let me think about it. And then I think about it and I'm like, yeah, let me do it a little differently because I think that's better. Almost universally, the first way probably would have been better. The instinctual reaction to the issue would have been better than me noodling on it for a half hour or hour to try and, with a screwdriver, get it to fit perfectly. A lot of times your gut instinct as an entrepreneur or as a business leader is correct, right? And then you overthink things and mess it up. So what I would encourage a lot of business leaders and entrepreneurs who are out there to do is sort of learn to turn off their mind and it's really kind of, I can give tons of advice on this if people are interested. There's some Q&A at the end, but I'll give some simple frameworks. Okay. The first thing is don't immediately react, right? Because you don't know what the source of your instant reaction is. And I would argue that a lot of times it's like childhood trauma or triggers or whatever that's just like, react, right? So something happens, don't react. Get angry, don't get upset, don't get happy, don't jump up, don't crack the champagne, just let it come, right? And be present with it. And instead and watch how you're reacting to it. Right? I'm feeling a little upset here. Why am I upset? Oh, this is making me really happy. Why am I happy? And then actually, if you wait, you're going to have an instinctual reaction to it that's separated out from that immediate response. And you'll feel it, I promise. Because once all those instinctual responses sort of pass, you'll be like, oh, this seems like something I should do here. And you'll feel it, right? It's like a feeling. And then, what I would recommend is get good at recognizing that feeling and not letting your mind, your heart, your other things get in the way and just go with that. And I promise you, I don't do that enough, but I try. And if you do that, if you get in the habit of doing it, your entrepreneurial career will be much better because we're running around with mental models and figments of our imagination, solving problems that don't exist, reacting with, learned reactions from our childhood, which are almost definitely wrong because look where our society is. And this is the modality that we're building things. So a different modality is coming at it from a much more grounded, thoughtful, and aligned place. And that will, I promise, help you succeed as an entrepreneur.
That's really, really great perspective on entrepreneurship. And I really kind of align with you when you say gut is greater than the overfitting with rationalization. So I've seen that a lot. You're trying to create a trap for your idea. You don't know if the idea works in the first place because the problem is somewhere in the figment of imagination. What do you think are some of the things which need to be fixed in?
Oh, I have a list. I have a long list. I mean, look, there's fix away. So where do we begin? I mean, there really is almost nothing that isn't broken because the entirety of human activity is destructive, right? So, if you were to go, like, we need to start fixing things. And I think entrepreneurs and the resulting capital provided to entrepreneurs needs to be improved because those are the fixers. The entrepreneurs are the fixers. So that's been a big focus of mine. Healing collectively, individually, this is another very large focus of mine. We were working on mental health and well-being at scale with the Founder Institute before the pandemic, but the pandemic was just such a big, powerful, overwhelming thing. We had to slow down those initiatives to just to grapple with the well-being of everyone in our network, which is massive. But definitely the mental well-being and mental illness is a huge, and healing are massive area, and tons of innovation is needed there. Look, I'll keep things super simple for you. Humanity and all civilizations can easily be measured by how they treat the mentally ill. And it's a very difficult problem. There's a television show by some friends of mine called Westworld, and Westworld 3 is essentially about how do you deal with mentally ill. And, they're mentally ill robots and AI, and they're mentally ill humans, and, and it's all like chaos breaks loose. But how do we deal with the mentally ill? And we're doing a terrible job. So we need to heal ourselves, heal the healable parts of mental illness, and then the parts of mental illness that we can heal, we really need to go on a soul-searching mission on what to do there. Education is also, we're training people for jobs that just don't exist. They're talking about figments of the imagination. I would say that we're innovating away jobs, and we're creating people to take the jobs that we're actually eliminating. It's like preposterous. And so education and innovation are out of alignment, and we're not teaching people how to think. And I know in the Nordics a lot better, but it's still terrible on the whole. And it's a tough thing because it's such an important endeavor. You don't want to skip education, but handedly, like I've been I have 3 children, 2 of them are young, and I ran their education for most of the pandemic personally, and I think they've grown more as a result of that than any sort of classroom environment. And then I have many more, but I'll throw one. I think socializing, by the way, I think pod socializing is a huge area. Lots of innovation is needing. This Facebook is really disgusting. And it's had a terrible, awful, horrible effect on humanity. But I think new models of socialization are longer connections, sustained over periods of time, deep friendships, not everything being politicized and sexualized and everything else, but actual bonding of humans. I think there's a lot of innovation there. But the big last one I'll bring up is we need to just regenerate our planet. And, we need to, grow, I like to say, grow a bridge, plant a road, harvest packaging. We need to start creating bioregenerative models for everything that we do, whereby right now we go in, we mine ore in Australia, strip mining and killing everything. We pollute water and air to ship it to China. We turn it into steel. We pollute water and air there. And on the way, we destroy a river. We build a steel bridge with the ore from Australia, and we then drive a vehicle for hours a day to do something that doesn't matter. and no one cares about and isn't making the world any better. And like that whole cycle of destruction is kind of insanity when you think about it. Like, and no one's happy. The boat captain, worker in the car, driving an hour each way to an accounting job or, something like that. So we need to start coming up with models that add more biodiversity in everything that we do, that create opportunities for the planet to regenerate in every step of our daily life, and just make this gift that we have called life into the most beautiful thing possible.
Great words, Adeo, like on regeneration and creating new models. I think on entrepreneurship, since the activity starts from ground up, that's where you go into your passion, find a problem, and then kind of solve it without thinking of time as a fixed constraint and taking it forward. How do we change big corps or the existing models that are stuck there? So entrepreneurship can change from ground up. And then you said when you started the VC lab program to fuel up the entrepreneurship. So that's going in the right direction. What happens? What's already there?
Well, look, so big companies are in trouble because for many different reasons. For the most part, they are okay. So if the bulk of human activity is destructive, right, then that destruction is consciously or unconsciously being caused by big companies. Okay. So if we're in this period where we're going to create a new economy to undo the destruction and reduce the destruction that we're doing at the same time, the downfall of the modern large enterprise is inevitable. Now, I believe that by 2030, we will hit the UN Sustainable Development Goals and actually exceed them. And so we'll start tipping the seesaw the other way. Okay, maybe it will be right in the middle around 2030, which is essentially what the UN Sustainable Development Goals are. Exactly. Now, let's go back. So if we're even around 2030, that means that most companies are sort of have a no more than 10 years, sort of 9-ish year horizon before stuff's going to dramatically change. So a lot of them are sitting on enormous amounts of money, and a lot of others are making enormous amounts of money. So I would just take pretty much all of the money that I'm making and that I have, and I would divide it into two things. Okay. One is internally investing in change. And two is externally investing in change. And if you can say, okay, look, I'm going to re-educate, I'm going to start new business lines, I'm going to take and with all their profit, then there's a chance that they can come up with things internally that are change agents for a brighter future, that are sort of entrepreneurship, if you will. And then take the other half and look externally at what people are doing in the entrepreneurship world related to what they're doing, innovations, and fund them, right? Because what eventually is going to happen, whether they like it or not, is a young woman or man will create something that will disrupt their business. And it's either going to be a big disruption, like a wrecking ball that comes and destroys their whole business, or it will be death by a million cuts, which is happening in the banking industry today. Like every sliver of the banking industry is being disrupted. And like banks are just like, we're an ATM. It's like, well, you don't need an ATM anymore. Okay, we're, we're a place where you sign stuff. It's like, well, you don't need to sign things anymore. Well, we have nice real estate that you can get cookies at. it's like there's going to be nothing left of these banks soon. And so, but that's happening across the board. And banks, for example, have tons of money right now. So again, if I were a bank, half of it being put internally of my profits and money that is available, and half of it investing in things like Robinhood and every other fintech innovation happening in the world today. And then I believe that if that balance is done right, these big companies can be a part of the solution rather than today they are the problem.
They can regenerate themselves, the entire business model. Great thoughts, Adeo. We'll take a few questions from Marina. Can you jump into the call and let's see what audience have to say? Okay. I think we have a very active chat going on.
Yeah, it's too small for me to read, so okay. I'm sorry, guys.
Hi, Marina.
Hi, Raimo, and hi, Adeo. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I just wanted to comment on that. Indeed, the minute you start sharing about your understanding and your vision about entrepreneurship and its role and what's going on in the world, the chat started going crazy. I think you just cracked open that, vulnerability when you're an entrepreneur, you're working on something good. Sometimes you're a bit shy to talk about the soft things and the vulnerable parts because you feel like you need to talk money and investment and you need to have this stuff, business pitch and, but I felt people were really connecting to what you were saying. And yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Changed the atmosphere. Yeah, super, super interesting. So I just take the space for the questions. So I would love to comment on a lot of things. It's amazing what you were describing. Thank you very much. We have a question from Sven Loprien, and he has ideated a healthy fast food chain. And I'm throwing the question at both of you, Naimul and Adeo, because he's looking for investments and he's looking for about 50 million SEK to start. And he wants to patent this worldwide because...
How much is 50 million SEK in dollars?
That'll be divided by 10, so 5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't know I used to know all the European and other conversions off the top of my head. Okay, $5 million to start, yeah. I have an easy thought on that to keep it super quick. Look, 5 million. Let's put it this way: as a 48-year-old, multiple successful entrepreneur and investor and fundraiser, a venture capitalist, I would not go with that. If I were starting a new business, I would not ask for that much money. So you had the funding world works in phases, and 5 million in Europe is really what's called a Series A phase. And so what you do is you will start with what's called a pre-seed or angel phase of raising capital. And in Europe, maybe you could get $500,000 US or 5 million SEK, right? So then you would go to your seed phase. That might be 1 million or more. And so 10 million SEK. Sometimes you can get maybe 15 million in your seed, but let's say 1 million. Then you would go to maybe a second seed, which would be like 3 million. And then you would go to your, in dollars, 3 million in dollars. And then you would go to your Series A, which would be the 5 million that you were talking about. So, you just have to sort of play the game the way that it's set up. And I don't love the design of the game. I've certainly had a heavy hand in trying to change it. But that's how the game is played right now. So if you want to raise that money, you have to do it in that order and make milestones along the way. But you can, for example, all the things that I just said, the pre-seed / angel, 2 seeds, and a Series A, could all be raised within 18 months from right now. So you might end up with more like $10 million if you're in alignment and you're making great progress. All that can be done. And that's not a lot of time.
Yeah. Same from my end. I think what's important is to break down the big thing into small digestible chunks. Yeah.
Is there another question? I got 2 more minutes and then my next meeting.
Yeah, we have a question from Badir, and he's asking, how do we incentivize saving the planet? And what he means is that he would also prefer to work on planet-saving projects, but many founders cannot afford startups that will be probably losing a lot of money before going in the positive direction, in the plus side.
Look, that's like a cop-out. You can make money doing anything. Trust me, people make money doing lots of stupid things, right? They sold pet rocks, for heaven's sakes, So if you're saying that I can't save the planet because it doesn't make money, like I don't remember reading a rule in the God's rule book of money making that said that statement's at all true. I would argue that every single one of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals represents many businesses. So actually, I'll give you something very easy. We created a concept called a for progress company. And for progress companies actually make money and save the planet. And we took the 169 sub-goals of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we turned them into measurable KPIs. Mm-hmm. And those, because a goal might be no end hunger, and then there'll be somewhere around 15 sub-goals, 9 to 15 sub-goals per. And then each of those we turned into KPIs, and sometimes multiple KPIs that startups can pursue.
Fantastic.
And I promise you, and you can look at fi.co/progress, and you can actually search them and browse them, and you can create a list of the ones you want to build a business around. And all of those businesses can and should be profitable, 100%. And so I would argue that and I talk about this, right? The innovation economy that heals the planet should and will be as large as the economy today that's destroying the planet. So in fact, I think the greatest single economic opportunity of our collective life is creating the economic models and businesses, both, that regenerate the planet and in opposition to all the businesses and economic models we have today that destroy the planet. So I would encourage you to go to the fi.co/progress page and research some of these things. But all the things that you start from the working assumption that all the things that you think are wrong. And I'll tell a final story, but I am late, so I got to run. But I'll tell a final story after this. So I was driving back from Long Island with my college roommate, Elon Musk. And I've told this story a few times. And it was night. It was 2001, and he had just exited PayPal, and I had just taken a company public, and I exited that. I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know. He's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. And I made a joke because it was dark, space. And we were like, that's a stupid idea. Like, we can't do anything in space. Why? Like, individuals can't do anything in space. And then we're like, well, why is that? It's like, well, it's expensive. Like, why is it expensive? Well, it's this. And like, well, it's a domain of the government. It's like, why is it the domain of the government? And at the end of the day, we're like, it's a tin can with fuel that goes up. I mean, like, what like everything that prevented us from going into space was in our mind. There was actually no like laws and you can't go to, it was all just in our mind. And not only that, we realized we had no idea what we were talking about. Like all the things we thought were just models that were not based on actual reality, actual science, actual law, or anything. So we immediately decided, like, why? Like, this is crazy. Let's go. And we flew around the world over the next few months and met with the space agencies in Europe, the space agencies in Russia, in various space-related businesses and agencies in the U.S., and talked with everybody and realized every one of our mental models was wrong. So don't think that you had like, oh, it must be a nonprofit or I can't make money saving the world. Those are mental models that I don't know where you got them from, but I can assure you they're probably wrong. They're figments of your imagination. So instead of creating walls that prevent you from doing what needs to be done, take the walls down and try and think about things as constructively and open-mindedly as possible and find ways to change the world, and you will change the world. Okay. With that said, thank you very much, guys. This was lovely. I am late for a very important meeting. So bye, guys.